morning to you, Yogendra Yadav. It's a pleasure to have you with us and talking to B.PAC. And we are very pleased, and we thought we would do a small session of dialogue with you. It is part of our Leader Speak series, where we want to get views of thoughtful individuals like you as to what ails democracy and how can we bring hope to the citizens of this country, and youth in particular, because they are the ones who are going to carry the flag of democracy to the next generation. So let me start with my first question on participative democracy. Is there a decline in participative democracy over the last 72 years of independence? Do you feel there is a decline, or do you believe that the India Against Corruption was a turning point and there may be a slight change in narrative? And if so, what do you see in the landscape?
Let's look at the big picture first. We all worship democracy. We say democracy is lovely, it is necessary, it is sacred, and we all hate politics. And we don't realize that there is something inherently contradictory about it. You cannot love democracy and hate politics, because hating politics is, in the last instance, destroying democracy. Politics can exist without democracy. Democracy cannot exist without politics. And what we have witnessed in our country over the last 70 years or so is a decline of politics. And the trouble is that we love it. We celebrate it. We say, oh, let us not politicize an issue. We don't realize that unless any serious issue in this country is politicized, farmers' issue is politicized, and you have huge rallies of farmers saying, otherwise we will. No one works, but once they do, everyone remembers farmers. So the important thing is to remember that democracy is not a lovely auto machine which would produce lovely outcomes by itself. Democracy is only as good as we make it. We have to work. We have to participate in democratic politics. So someone like me has chosen that as my principal job. So I would not engage with these people at all. But some people have to do that. That's another job that someone else has to do. The problem with our democracy is that we have only one single instrument to make our democracy work, namely elections. It is a good instrument. It is an effective instrument. But you cannot carry out an operation if you have one big knife in your hand. You need needles, you need all kinds of small things, you need all kinds. 50 instruments a surgeon has on his table. You need 50 instruments for democracy to work. At the moment, we have one big hammer. It's good, but you can't kill a fly with a hammer. So you need different things. So we need various forms of civic engagement. We need lots of institutions to monitor governance on a day-to-day basis, to do small expose, to give tiny incentives, to push along, to give them help, to nudge, to threaten, to do all kinds of these small things. Similarly, you need institutions which bring better quality of food to our democratic politics. So you need all kinds of things to be done to make our democracy more lively. We need institutions of oversight, we need institutions of vigilance, we need institutions of social and public audit, we need institutions of financial transparency. We need hundreds of institutions in this country. Unfortunately, we have only political parties, which have become election machine and nothing else. So we need to invigorate our public life with lots of institutions performing different functions at different tiers and tracks. That is what a healthy democracy is. And
trying to collaborate.
Working
and not
together,
becoming silos.
Understanding each other's role. Like as I said, I wouldn't do what you are doing, but I know what you are doing is important. Someone needs to do that. That's not the principal thing of my life, but it should be a principal job for someone else. ADR, Association for Democratic Reform. They do one limited thing. They do it very well. Given a choice, I wouldn't invest my life in that work. But I deeply respect those who do so because they have made a difference to our public life. some institutions should simply focus on tracking the finances of all these public figures. We need an institution which would simply look at conflict of interest and do nothing else. Conflict of interest in our public life. So we need hundreds of institutions of that kind, and each one should understand what the other one is doing.
When you look at the various tiers of governance today that we have, would you say that the third tier is the most broken and the weakest link in the chain? And if so, what can we do to strengthen that piece? Because if the foundation is weak, the entire edifice is weak.
Our entire federalism is upside down. We have institutions that perform largest number of functions and are responsible for directly improvement in the quality of life of people have minimum amount of funds, functions and functionaries. This is not my language, it's the language of Government of India. Government of India officially acknowledges funds, functions, functionaries are not available to local bodies. And that institution, which is most remote from the people, has most distant things and is responsible for least number of direct welfare activities, has the highest proportion of resources, the central government. They have least capacity to deal with people on the ground. And constitution, they are not responsible for agriculture, they are not responsible for education, not responsible for health, not responsible for most of the roads, yet they have all the funds. So our entire edifice of federalism is upside down. It's an inverted pyramid, which we need to change. And the worst sufferer of that is the local government, municipal and panchayati raj government. A, because constitutionally they have very little powers. B, whatever the constitution permits, state governments are not willing to give it to them. Then they give power, they don't give funds. So just as a simple comparison, when I last looked at it about 10-15 years ago, in the US, of the entire government spending, about 40% is spent by the municipal bodies. In our country, it's about 2 to 3%. So how can you expect these things to run if you don't give them any resources? So that entire edifice needs to be changed, and I very strongly feel that while 73rd Amendment, which is an amendment to institute Panchayati Raj government, at least the formal architecture is correct. In the 74th Amendment, which is for urban self-government, I think the architecture is completely wonky. We need to rewrite that amendment altogether and give municipalities real power, real autonomy, real finances, including capacity to levy taxes. Unless we do that, we cannot expect these institutions to work. Countries where democracy works well are not countries which have good prime ministers and good presidents. They are usually theatre personalities all over the world. You can look at the US and the kind of theatre which is happening. US, if whatever runs in the US, runs not because of the fellow sitting in Washington. He's a non-entity. Sometimes he can be charming like Obama was. Sometimes he can be an embarrassment like Mr. Trump is. But US works because municipalities work, because their mayors work. That is what we need to strengthen, and that's completely broken in our country.
That is where there is a conflict between the interests of the state and the interest of real public good, because the state sees this, the key cities as the generators of wealth, and therefore they don't want to let go. So it's ceding control, and there is continuous resistance to implementation of the 74th Constitutional Amendment. There's a lot of agitation. People are requesting, they're asking for strengthening of the ward committees, greater devolution of powers, etc. But governments are hesitant because their cash generation machine suddenly gets closed. So how do we resolve this conundrum?
There are two different parts of it. One is, can the cash being generated in Mumbai be used only for Mumbai? The answer is no, it cannot, should not be. The cash being generated in Bangalore is in so many ways cash generated from the rest of the country, which happens to be siphoned through Bangalore. So obviously the city of Bangalore should not have access to all the resources. The second question is, whatever share Bangalore is entitled to,
can the administrators of the city use it in an autonomous way? That is what we need. Let's say Bengaluru is entitled to 10%, 5% of the resources that are being funneled through Bengaluru, because these cities are nothing but ways of funneling money from the rest of the country. So the funnel cannot occupy everything that passes through it. But whatever little resources, say X amount of resources that are earmarked for Bengaluru, who should decide that? The Chief Minister should not be taking those decisions.
B.PAC was able to push a via media idea, not a perfect solution, of a special minister for Bangalore. Not the best solutions, but at least now that post has been created. It's been there for a few years now. So there is a minister who is looking after Bangalore and its needs. So there is a budget allocation. There is, it's a step forward. Sometimes you need to take baby steps before you can take that leap.
Yeah, I mean, ideally I would not want a minister. Ideally I would want a mayor who is directly responsible, whose election or non-election is dependent on whether he does something or not for the area. This minister is in the last instance accountable to that one constituency from where he or she is elected.
Correct.
I'd rather have someone who's responsible to the whole of the city. So we have ministers for different districts. In several states of India, I don't know if that's the case in Karnataka, there are ministers in charge of districts. Now that's a good practice and a bad practice. So I mean, really, there is no substitute for devolution of power. We really seriously.
So I think we've had a small via media where government attention is normally completely dispersed across the state, knowing that the city generates so much of the economic activity. We at least now have one minister whose focus is to ensure that that there is that attention given. And maybe this is a path to, we are continuously pushing the reforms to ensure that mayor, directly elected mayor is the ultimate goal. But sometimes some intermediate steps, there has to be some give and take at all points. So that's one contribution that was there. I'd like to dwell upon this whole point that you made about elections becoming a point event and how to keep citizens engaged prior to the elections and after elections, so India doesn't go to sleep. Every 5 years we wake up, there is massive turnout, there's a lot of activity, and then we forget about our elections. How do we create the continuous pressure, and how do we bring public accountability into the system? And how can citizens, what frameworks do we need for citizens to engage?
Look, in the last instance, the mainstream political institutions, namely political parties, need to be transformed. We have democracy, and the principal vehicle for carrying that forward is an institution called political party. That institution doesn't perform the functions for which it is meant. It has become strictly an election machine and no more. So political parties need to be revived, reinvigorated, transformed. The very activity of politics needs to be redefined, because politics has become now only one thing, namely contesting elections, getting into government, etc. That politics is about struggles, it's about constructive work. Politics is about knowledge, politics is about your inner being. We've forgotten all that. We've come to a very, very narrow definition of politics, which is what is at the heart of the problem. In order to strengthen what the parties are doing, as I said, we need lots of institutions. Institutions of accountability, of audit, of transparency, of visibility. And the important thing is to hold these public representatives accountable, to enlarge the pool of those who come to public life, to in some way equip them better to do what they do. So we need all those things. A number of institutions need to be done, need to be made creative to improve the quality of our public life.
So let us come to this issue of women in politics. We find consistently that women occupy a very small portion, maybe less than 13 to 14% in the national politics, and the state politics very low. At least in Bangalore, we have been able to push 50% representation at the council level. So how do we push the whole concept of women's participation in politics, and what ails that?
See, the entire structure is tilted against women, right from bottom to the top. I at one point did research on these issues, and the conclusions are quite clear. People do not discriminate against women candidates. Parties do in giving tickets. That is the bottom. If that can be broken, if women become candidates, people vote them. That's not an issue at all. So the important thing is to break that bottom. That has to be done legally and constitutionally. Therefore, some version of quota for women, whether it is done through the reservation route, which I don't think is the best route, but some legal mandated version has to be brought in. Mandatory quotas have to be put in place. And once they have been done at the local level, as you said, then it's a question of improvement of quality of those who come. That happens by and by. But right now there is a bottleneck at the top, at the Parliament and Assembly level. That bottleneck needs to be cleared. And unless we do that, we would not have a movement. Once we do that, a lot of other things need to be done. Changing the, better opening for women in political parties, similar voluntary quota like we have in our party, 25% at every level, including the top, has to be kept for women. And if there are no women, it has to be kept vacant till they come.
So the seat, not a particular constituency reserved for women, but overall quota is...
Yeah. So we need to do that.
So your objection is to not reserve a particular constituency?
The Women's Reservation Bill was a technically flawed bill. It's not very nicely designed bill, because in much of our legal things we go by intent. Nice intent, we don't worry about the design. Sometimes the design is very poor. I think it's badly designed bill, but I do understand the intent. I'm afraid we need to complete here.
So, last thing on electoral funding and electoral reforms. Any thoughts? Is this preventing women from participating?
No, I don't think that's the thing about women, but we've come up with this manifesto called Reclaiming the Republic, which is about providing an alternative manifesto. And one of the key points here is electoral reforms. We've come up with 8 or 10 suggestions, primarily to do with funding. 2 key suggestions. First of all, unroll all the non-transparent things which have been done in the recent past, including electoral bond. But this is a great leap backwards. We've gone from semi-transparent system to a completely non-transparent system. So all that needs to be removed. And then state funding. Some form of state funding is a must. The real problem in electoral funding is not ceiling. The real problem is floor. Ordinary good candidates are unable to reach the floor level. That is what should get attention. The problem is not too much of black money. The problem is too little of white money. That is where something needs to be done.
So, last message to our audience, who will be largely youth and passionate political people who want to be engaged with politics. What is your message of hope to them?
As I said, politics is the Yogendra. Anyone who wants to do good to the country, politics is the route that we must take. But because politics is about, as I say in Hindi, शुभ को सच में बदलने की कोशिश का नाम है राजनीति. It is about making good viable, making your dreams real. But remember, politics in this sense is not merely about contesting elections. It is about electoral politics, it is about struggles on the ground, it is about creative work, it is about producing knowledge and ideas, and it is about connecting to your inner self. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Yogendra ji. It is a pleasure having you. And this is Revathy Ashok, CEO and Managing Trustee of B.PAC. Hope all of you enjoyed this interaction.